2 decades ago talking about it, you guys know. But, the purist out there that doesn't understand the economics behind it, the failures, you see the failures. Somebody's putting the bill with the failures.
Maybe 15 more. I'm thinking, I don't really use any fertilizer, I use a lot of manure, and I'm thinking maybe with the dry weather, the manure then.
Yeah, your organic compounds didn't exchange it. That's why I like things like nutrition and Vita, things like that, because when that phenomenon happens, they kick in. That kicks in. It takes over.
Good morning. Dry weather.
Over there, perfect. Oh, it does, yeah. Well, now the next thing is all that carryover. And guys always come to us, beans have stalled out. Yeah. I always say, well, if your beans have stalled out on yield, go back and look at your corn flow, right? Because you start getting this carryover nitrogen, and it shuts nodulation down, and it'll start forming that B2, and that pushes that ahead. And then what happens is it's gonna start nodulating into the dry season. And then it'll do very good. You see that you control your end on the corn, that will help actually your nodulation, or your nodulation onset.
How you doing, Ross? I'll walk us. Bob.
Oh, yeah, we'll do some introductions, so when we get going. Are you ready, Sheila?
Yep, I am.
All right, let's call the meeting to order. First thing we always start off with is public comments. Are there any public comments? We have to call this 3 times. Are there any public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of October 19th. Any discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, second by Ross, to approve the October 19th minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to approving the current agenda. Any discussion?
I have one edit to the agenda that was sent out in the cover crop approvals. Just crossing out Rachel Wackus's, the paperwork wasn't completed, so otherwise that would be the only change. So that one will be on the next meeting's agenda.
So Rachel Walker's approval move forward.
Yep.
Alrighty. Any other discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ross, second by Bob to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. I'm a second behind. Who approved and who seconded?
Bob and Ross.
Okay, thanks.
All right, caught up, Sheila?
Yep, I
Okay.
am, thanks.
On to the consent items. We want to go through those quick,
Okay,
discussion.
yep, we have the payment to Winona County for my time, and the rest of the items are all based on approval later in the agenda. They're all cost shares. One for Kiefer septic system for electric work, and then the remaining for cover crop payments. And so that's all of the agenda or consent items.
So was that electric, was that just for a lift pump or what?
Yeah, it was. And we had, I thought I had the final agenda or the invoice from the septic installer, and then it was like a couple days after our last meeting, I got that it was for inspection fees, and then looks like it was septic wiring. So you had to have some kind of pump in there.
This has to be a lift or something, lift
Yeah.
pump of some sort.
Yeah.
Huh? Okay,
I thought it was gravity feed initially.
interesting. Any other discussion?
I make a motion to approve the consent.
Sorry.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, second by Bob to approve the consent items. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, board reports. Who wants to start? Start on your side?
I went to, can't remember who put it up in Lewiston. There was some kind of drinking water protection forum put up some night downtown Lewiston. And It was interesting, there was enough farmers there that there was some pushback on some of the ideas that they're pushing forward. But it was civil discussion, it was pretty well put together, so,
Was that the one just a few weeks ago?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember who put it on, some company hired from the state that basically do these community engagements. And
Yeah.
I think they're out of
You didn't look
Mankato.
back, Sheila, did you?
I did not.
I know there was a few farmers that went.
Yep.
Yes, I think Andy.
Rob Miller,
Yeah, and Andy Cronenbush went.
Andy Cronenbush, and
It was actually put on by the MDH, and this was one of a series of meetings across the state to get
Yep.
input on a drinking water plan for the state for the next 10 years. I didn't find out about it till Friday, and it was on like Monday night or something like that.
Something like that,
Yeah.
Yep. Anyways, it was better than I thought it would be, so,
yeah,
it was good.
it's good.
So is it true that they offered gift cards to
Yep.
attendees and free food and free babysitting and?
No free food.
Free tire rotation.
Dang it.
Yeah, everybody came, got a $50, that's a state thing now. So essentially that's a state policy, they're trying to remove any barriers to people participating, so,
That's the first time I've heard of that.
Yeah.
yeah,
It was-
you're gonna see a lot more of it.
The
So you're
first-
telling me anybody that wants to show up gets paid $50?
No, it was the first 25 people, I think.
I think it's more than 25, but probably 50.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was about as many people that were there, they may have ran out of gift cards.
Taxpayer dollars hard at work.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So then do we have to offer the Whitewater area and whatever $50 gift cards if they come to our meeting?
If we ask them to participate,
You pick those out in the back, of the parking lot, there's a guy back there.
If we
It's
ask
a
them to-
legitimate question.
Yeah, it is. His name's
it's a
George.
legitimate question. If we ask them to participate, it wouldn't surprise me if 10 years down the road that that'll be a condition, is that.
Yeah. What are we moving to here?
I'm not saying I endorse it, I'm just saying.
Which department put it on? Public health?
Department of
NDH.
Health.
MDH, yeah.
Yeah.
Department of
Part of the Department of Health.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They hired a firm, I don't think there's anybody from the MDH there, but they hired
No.
a consulting firm to run it for them.
So who did the facilitating?
I can't check my email to tell you. They're out of like Mankato or something.
That was his firm, whoever.
Okay.
And yeah, I think it was the message that I had heard, Mark, and correct me, I was not there obviously, but the message I had heard was it seemed to have started off kind of one-sided, and then when a few of the farmers kind of spoke up, and even afterwards, it spoke up a little bit, started kind of explaining maybe the other side, that there was a few people's, maybe minds were changed a little bit. That's what Andy alluded to at the SWCD meeting.
Yeah,
And
I would agree that it was good that the farmers who did show up, showed up, so that they were able to provide, because a lot of people, if they're not in a rural area and they don't understand things, they may think they know things, but they don't, so.
Right.
So it's good, and the farmers who did show up did a good job, they were pretty level-headed, so good.
Wonderful. All right. On to James?
Not a lot at most at SW. Closed out the buffer law or their buffer contract, and actually ended up spending it on some new surveying equipment. So I don't know if that's available to other soil and water districts or not. And skip one, what was it, manager of the
Yep.
year or something,
Yep.
Bowser?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I wasn't there, but I heard about all the scheming, trying to make it surprise.
He was surprised.
Good, anything else? Ross?
Just the notes that our soil and water district for the first time in 5 years, you can correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah, at least.
is
All
fully
four.
staffed, fully staffed. 2 new technicians hired there late November, mid-November. Help me with the names, Josh.
Jim and
Do you know Jim's last name?
Jim, Abby Hoffman.
Abby, there you go.
So
I
2
can
new
picture the
technicians,
face.
Jim has experience in the public sector a little bit, was a science teacher,
Mhm.
social studies,
Social
science, something like
studies, yeah.
that, so, and then engineering background, I believe, so he'll help with the technical side, and then Abby's background, I don't recall. Do you recall, John?
Yeah, she, I think she has more like a conservation degree slash background. She's a little more tuned up with what the job actually is. Jim was just more of a well-trained on, I think, more technical side, and I think Abby's a little more on the community relations side. I think is the
So,
way
yeah, I think that's
understand
accurate, because that was what the board made the observation, that'll be a good combination. So we've got the public interaction piece, and then we've got the technical piece to back her up, so optimistic, fully staffed, ready to rock and roll, so that's very good news. The only other thing maybe I should direct toward James, so you are a Olmsted County Soil and Water rep, supervisor?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
So the conversation at our last meeting was relevant to your cover crop program, and it was reference to the ARPA funding and how you,
Dr. Mark.
okay. So
Decision, actually.
we have a few landowners that are envious of your payment program, and I think Winona County is paying half or less relative to Olmsted County, so that was the only observation is how did you process the ARPA money differently where you were able to distribute more funds for cover crops to incentivize them more than we have been.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it goes to your commissioners, so at a board level.
So county commissioners.
County commissioners took,
That was before me. That was before me.
I mean, essentially,
I'm kidding.
essentially every county board faced the same decisions. What do you want to do with all this quote unquote free money?
Yeah.
And we wanted to do things that were generational, not just paying everyday expenses and not hiring staff. So,
That's a big one.
so we dedicated originally 3 million, but we reserved 2 million, so now we're 5 million that we've approved to continue this program. And the state is looking strong in that program too, so.
You two were at our last meeting. Who's the name of the Bowser rep? Is it Dave?
Dave Copeland, yes,
Thank
he's
you.
filling in for Adam Bialki.
Okay, so Dave was in
This is the
attendance,
first time
and
I met him.
he helped and made reference and said that there's a lot of people in the state that have taken notice and are very impressed. So potentially that could be a roadmap for state cover crop.
Yeah, I think it may be, I'm hopeful it is. I mean, I'm sure it'll do different tweaking in different regions, but.
Just out of curiosity, Mark, how many dollars did you receive of ARPA money?
31, I think.
31 million?
Yep.
Okay.
Put 5 towards this.
And Wabasha received approximately 4 million.
Yeah, Winona, I think it was 9, 7 or 9. It wasn't a whole lot. Nothing or what you guys had.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I think it's based on population.
I think-
based on population, yeah. I don't know all the allocations, but I know it went to a lot of community. The board at the time decided it wasn't going to go to private, it was going to go to all community events such as the fair, finally got their new bathroom, much needed, some different projects like that, and so that's how they decided to spend theirs, and it was, right or wrong, that's what they did.
So that's all I had, but thank you.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, Wabasha put theirs, ARPA funds basically all in the roads. Transportation funds.
Yeah, they split it up too. I don't know where it all went, but.
So Wabasha County will approve our levy next Tuesday. We're gonna be right around that 4%.
I wish.
What percent?
4. Can't remember what we decided on the final.
It's better than our 9.4.
Yep. There again, ARPA is filling a couple of big holes in the transportation road planning process. Things are fairly quiet, so that's always good.
Good.
Well, I did go to the state soil and water convention, sat in on this presentation by Bureau of Water and Soil Resources. I suppose the biggest news really is there's tremendous amounts of funding available. So now there was some assessment, I can't remember by which company, but I think it'd have to be like an average of maybe 3 more employees per soil and water, but of course some wouldn't need any and some would need more than that. But to try to use this funding, so we've got to try to make an honest assessment now on if we're going to be able to do all that work, and because you don't want to take money that you're not going to be able to use, of course, was a big point that they made. So it's just a big job ahead of us, I guess. We're already pretty busy, I think, now, but see what happens.
Well, we just added some staff in the recent past. It's been about
Yes.
3 or 4 months, but
Yeah, we're probably
2 or 3.
what we would normally say fully staffed now, but still maybe need a little bit of training or experience on a few things, but it takes a little time to get on the path, so. But that's what I know, I guess.
Yeah, I've heard a few different feedbacks from the convention up there. I always enjoyed going up to it for a number of years. It's hard to think. I think this is my 8th year on this board already. Is it 8? I think it's the 8th year.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's crazy, time flies, but yeah, I went out on the SWC. I always enjoyed that. I was one of the weird people that always said, hey, don't give us taxing authority because I think it's gonna wreck the SWCDs. But that is actually generally one of my fears that I always brought up when I was there too. And we saw it a little bit with the buffer law and how the state dangled money into the counties and said, well, if you want this money, enforce the buffer law. Well, the county said, well, who are we gonna give a badge and a gun to go do it? Well, they weaponized the SWCDs. And in essence, for part of the community, it gave us a black eye. And I still fight and hope that through, if there's funding coming down, whether the state takes it out of our right pocket or left pocket, the federal government takes it out of our back, and the county takes it out of the other one, whatever it is, that they don't put us in a position where you become enforcers. That's always been my fear.
Technically, I think the county is the one that's supposed to really do any sort of action.
They do, but who do they have? So they
Yeah.
turn to the SWCDs and weaponize the SWCDs, and that scares me because I want to keep us neutral. So I'm going to keep bringing that up over and over and reiterating that point. And I brought it up for years. Sheila knows all my little quirks and, the things that I get scared to make sure that Big Brother doesn't pick on us little guys and do it by dangling the carrot out there. That's my fear, is that they turn us into the bad guys and we're supposed to be the good guys. So I just keep stating that. So Winona County, obviously our levy, 9.4. It's difficult to swallow that, but that's what 3 of the commissioners wanted, and so we were outvoted, us rural commissioners. So that's what that's going to get set at. I did have an opportunity to go up to testify at the Capitol for the subcommittee meetings. A couple senators and legislators asked me to go up as a quote-unquote ag expert, and just alluding to the so-called water CAFOS emergency that was been trying to get enacted. And so we had a short amount of time to testify and answer questions. Department of Health was there, Department of Ag was there, they testified, their main people were there. They wanted an ag expert and then a few farmers. So it was interesting. The points that I had brought up were, one, what I pounded for years is education over regulation. Showing landowners and farmers how to be profitable while being better stewards of the land, and they will change. And brought up to about typically when we see any sort of regulation or enforcement come in, the small guys are the first ones that drop out. They give up and say, well, I'm just gonna get a job in town. And it's a little counterintuitive to what I would think a certain message is out there for saving the smaller family farms. And then the second thing I brought up too is 20-some years in the ag industry, either managing companies, owning companies, all throughout the Midwest here. I have employees, and so we get to see a wide range of things from Montana to Michigan. And never have I seen in the industry such an acceptance for soil health, regenerative farming, nitrogen management, manure management. It's just, in the last 5 years, it's literally been flipped on its head. And people are coming to us. I remember preaching cover crops and get laughed off the farm 20 years ago. And, now all of a sudden it's, well, how do I do that? What's this in management? What are these tools that are out there? What are these biologicals? And so just the amount of, the reception to that verbiage is just totally changed. So I wanted it on record that somebody from the ag industry is sitting here saying, this is already in motion. Just give us time. We don't need regulation, we just need a little time. And if you want to help us out, let's get more education out there. So that was my message to the subcommittee. And so we're hoping it doesn't fall on deaf ears, excuse me. And we're hoping that they continue to let us do what we need to do. And that alludes a little bit back to the county with the taxes raising and everything else, and challenging the county, saying that, hey, we need growth, both in not only in just the urban population, but in the rural districts too, to keep funding these increased costs and the money they're giving out. And Commissioner Ward is really good at saying, we're the county of, well, no, we can't do anything, but we need funding sources. We don't have that. We get the overflow from Mayo and everything, right? And and it's clear where our growth curve is, and it's in the western part of our county. And even I live in St. Charles, and our housing values keep going up, and there's a lot of growth there, but everything else is a little stagnant. So, looking at these funding sources to continue to do what we do. Winona County is still dealing with an LEC issue. Our jail's done, but now we're on to figuring out the city and the county projects, how they're going to merge those together, keep them together. I'd say that's probably one of the bigger pressing things that we have outside of the levy. And Ross covered a lot of things at the SWCD. And I think that's everything for me. So
I will agree with you, Josh, the funding part of it. I mean, the county makes contribution to the SWCD, so when you look at all the other increased costs, and you want to keep a decent levy, it's tough to funnel more money into the SWCDs.
I, believe it or not, as passionate as I am about soil and water and everything else, it's just no different than farming. There's the economics, they got to match the agronomics, and that's that educational piece to show people that. And I actually did not vote to increase SWCD's funding, but I've not voted for anything. Everything's been flat. I just asked everybody to be flat, and just looking at our record levy that we were looking at, and just status quo for right now, and then challenge the other commissioners to say, hey, we gotta let some of these projects start to happen if we want to keep giving raises out. So, that's a big part of it. Okay, anything else? All right, we'll move on. All right, Sheila, we're on item 7A, financial update here.
Okay, for the end of October, with our checking and money market, we were sitting at just above $100,000, and then it went up a little bit to $103,600 for November, because we received a payment on a grant. And then just FYI, I know that we had, if you look at the November balance, we have in our checking, $12,962 at the end of November. I did transfer $30,000 from the savings to the checking so that we could cover the checks that we have at our meeting today.
I forget, Sheila, do we have that in the high interest savings?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's that making us? I've been seeing between 2 and 5.
Well, let's see, for October, it received almost $146.
On 30?
Yeah, and then on November, we received 137 almost, and that was at the end of November, and that was for 144.
On 30,000?
No, 144, 867. And that, the amounts that I have, that I report, are, I'm subtracting out what we have in the bank but have not spent. So the Clean Water Fund grants that we get a 50% payment up front. So it just sits in the bank, but it's not spent yet.
I'm just saying we can maximize the interest of that.
Yeah, and that's what Marcia Ward had recommended, let's shift more of that. So I did, and now I have to shift a little bit back so that we can cover the checks for today. And then you might notice too, I think it was in here, what we have are grants, the 3 grants that we are running, where we are sitting on spending those grants to date. And that includes the checks in today's packet, assuming that they're all taken care of and everything.
When do we have, how much time do we have to go through?
The drinking
remaining?
water protection grant, that one ends at the end of next year, and I did get an
So
extension.
2024.
Yes, and so that one, you know, I'm gonna have, excuse me, have a meeting with Wabasha and Winona SWCD just to kind of gauge where the cover crops will be for next year.
That's the one we filed an extension on.
Yes,
We don't
yes.
have another one.
Correct.
Right.
Right, and then also making a big plug for, hey, we have septic system upgrade money for low-income homeowners, if you have a failing system. So that, you know, I think we could use that too. But otherwise, the well sealing grant, you know, we sealed one well, we're waiting for the other one to get done. And then the local advisory team grant, that one just started.
How is that local advisory team going?
Oh,
That's the one in the Duismus, correct?
We had meetings in June, and
Which one did I make it to?
you went to the Altura one, the Utica one, and I have it is on the agenda, but we can talk about it now too.
Well, if I'm on the turn,
Yeah, we'll jump to it.
Okay.
Let's finish this up.
Okay.
Okay, audit proposal? Any discussion on the financial?
Right.
Nothing? Okay, move on
Well,
to that
the audit proposal, it was brought to our last meeting to have a proposal from the auditor approved. And it was brought up, well, do we have to do an audit every year? And I did find out, yes, that we do, because I checked with Bowser, and they said we're kind of in the same boat as watershed districts, and they are required to have an audit every year. And then I also checked with the Office of the State Auditor, and they confirmed, yes, that we do. And then I checked our joint powers agreement, and it says right in there that we will,
have to.
we will reconcile our budget every year and have an audit. So, yes, we do have to have an audit.
The unfortunate part is that it's so expensive for a board like us that
I know.
doesn't have that.
I
You know, you
know.
look back years ago, Peterson, you know, even when I was mayor of Altura, Peterson did ours, and I think they were
$1,000.
Yeah, $1,200 or
Yeah,
something
I know,
crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
Every year
And-
they bump up.
And this, you know, now it's just getting to be quite extensive for the little bit that we do.
I know, I agree.
I'm not saying we do little, I'm just saying for the dollars that flow through.
Right, I agree. But their audit fee is $3,200. And if this board approves, then I will connect with Samantha, and at our next meeting, there will be an agreement letter to sign.
So with that.
so do we do an RFP with anybody, or we just go with Peterson, or? I mean,
I was gonna allude
it's
to-
getting tougher and tougher to find.
Peterson has
people.
generally been
Okay.
the probably
I mean,
most
I'm-
cost effective.
I'm fine with Peterson, I'm
Yeah.
just a question.
I'll give you an example. When Wanda stepped in as kind of the office manager at the SWCD, they were using Peterson at the time, and I made a suggestion, this was 6 years ago. I said, you know, I realize there's gonna be more money, but until we get the books straightened out, let's switch to Smith Schaefer. And even Wanda said after doing that, how much it helped her clean everything up, and now it's twice the money than what Peterson was. So there are considerably more expensive options out there that,
Yeah.
tend to be more, and Peterson, nothing against him, I've talked to their people multiple times over 15 years for different things I've sat on. They're kind of rubber stampers, and they do it cheap because, especially for things like this where it doesn't take a whole lot, so they tend to be the most cost-effective ones out.
Okay.
That's what I've seen, unless you've seen anything else.
I haven't, and I know that's always something I always touch base with Wanda. And the thing with our books, because I'm an employee of Winona County, and the Whitewater Joint Powers Board just pays for a set number of hours. You know, I appreciate that because I don't have to deal with figuring out FICA and, you know, if there were employees, that would add a big extra layer of complexity to trying to do this. Right now, you know, QuickBooks are fairly easy because we don't have employees.
Well, I think just due diligence, transparent accountability.
Right,
We need
I
somebody
agree. outside
outside of
Right.
the firm to do it. you know,
Right.
Even if that comes with a little cost.
Yeah.
So,
And we do have in place where we have 2 signatures on the checks and things like that. But,
So you're looking for a motion then?
mhm.
I'll make a motion to go with Peterson for auditing.
second?
Second.
Motion made by Mark, second by Ross, to approve Peterson for the 2023 audit proposal. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, MCIT premium,
Yes, and our MCIT premium, I don't have the bill yet. I will get it probably after this meeting, and it will be due the end of January, which is before our next meeting. So what I typically have been doing is I work out at an electronic transfer from the bank. And there's like a $3 fee to do it, but, you know, it gets done, and then it's not late. And I think it'll be about $1,500, I'm guessing, based on what it was last year.
how did we do that? Did we just,
I will have it on the bills payable. I'll show it at the next meeting, and then just note that that has already been paid and pre-approved
I
at the
was thinking we
December.
did a motion though to allow that to happen,
Right,
but we capped it, we just capped it at, you know, $250 to not exceed, the motion was to not exceed 200, to approve, to pay MCIT to not exceed $250 or the
well,
billable rate
it
or
was
something.
like $1,500.
Or
Yeah.
whatever, not 15,
Yeah.
but you know what I'm saying, we set an
Yeah.
amount, just saying that it couldn't exceed that. And
I'll
then
make a
allow it
motion to
be
pay MCIT, is it? Yeah,
Second.
At build rate,
up to $2,000.
at build rate, whatever.
And
Yeah.
then-
Yep. We'll call it at build rate, can we change that?
That's
Okay.
fine.
All right,
We got a motion, have a second?
Yeah, he did. You did.
Second, no one said it.
Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't hear
Yeah,
it,
I
I'm
did.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't
It
hear
was
it.
rapid fire.
Talking about, no, you're good here. Motion made by Mark, second by Bob, to approve the payment post-meeting here for MCIT at build rate. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right. Whitewater Drinking Water Protection Grants.
okay, pass this one around. This is the cash payment for the electric work for the Kiefer septic system.
Any feedback from that? Wanna do it?
She's delighted.
Yeah.
It was in dire straits that needed to be replaced. It was a complex, even though it was a small system, it was complicated because the lot was small, and we, in fact,
That was extra property one?
well, no, that's not the extra property
Okay.
one. But she did have, you know, they went through a variance at Winona County to, in case they needed to, go into the neighboring parcel, which she co-owns with her siblings. But it had to go through the, you know, but in the end, it still was retained on their property. And so it went well. It was complicated, but it got it in there anyway.
Anybody know what SSTS stands for?
Subsurface sewage treatment system.
Yes.
It is.
You're welcome. There's a lot
So
of
is
enactment.
this a family house?
It's two people, yeah. And it's a, I believe, a two-bedroom.
It's an Altura address, but it's actually an Elba.
Yeah,
Right.
yep. So, anyway, so that was, glad that we got that one done. And then, the balance, the landowner cost share match, was, worked with Wanda with the Winona SWC to get it acting. So it worked out.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to the pending systems.
We're gonna approve it?
Yep. So,
Approve, keepers?
oh yeah, we gotta approve that one, sorry. Yeah,
Make a
I
motion
forgot.
to
We
approve
gotta-
the payment to keep.
We got this one. Bob, you might as well second it.
Second,
Should I- To approve Keeper's project.
hopefully it'll get over to the.
Yeah, we just moved it around the track.
Yeah.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries, all right. On to this pending septics.
Okay, so we have two septic systems that this board approved, and we're waiting for projects to get done. The Barron's one, that's the one that they actually had to go through and purchase a part of the neighbor's parcel. And there was a delay in that because the landowner was overseas for a time. But anyway, they got it worked out. It is purchased and ready to go. And it looks like it'll be done in the spring. So that's kind of the plan right now. The Cleese system, this is in Wabasha County. This septic system is more expensive. It's more complex because it's a small lot and a large household. And so he has an estimate from one contractor, and he is waiting to get a second estimate, but these guys have been so busy, they haven't showed up to do an estimate, so he was kind of, he wanted to weigh it out before he said, yeah, this is the one I'll go with. So that one I'm assuming will be happening next year as well.
Okay. Any other, I'm gonna jump on my soapbox again. I keep saying that these septic systems, wells, even, you know, we look at invasive species, things like, people buy these properties, and I still go back to this education over taxpayer-funded scenarios. We know a lot of these situations are needed to be done, and, you know, the farmer oftentimes gets blamed for whatever nitrates in the water, but there are a fair amount of these things that are a problem, just like well sealing. But I still go back and say, hey, when people are purchasing properties, I hold the banks somewhat accountable and say, are the banks really doing due diligence to say, hey, landowner, you might have some issues down the road. And if you're so strapped that you can't afford to fix this or fix that, is this necessary? Can you afford these things? And rather than saying, well, we got the bank gave me the money for the house, but I don't have any money to do the updates and or to fix the things that potentially can go wrong. And so I still think there's a link there that there's got to be some accountability on funding to buy properties that puts the landowner in the position to be able to maintain the property, not the taxpayer to do it for him. So more than willing to help people want to do that, but I think there's a little accountability that needs to come with it. So
Maybe what you're saying is the cost of the property should be less to start with if there's work that needs to be done.
I look at these escrow accounts, you know, they do it with taxes, they do it with insurance. You know, why isn't there a set aside a fund? If you are 100% responsible for your well and sewer, you know, there could easily be a set aside a fund that's created at the bank that says, hey, we're gonna put X amount of dollars in for maintenance or whatever, just the same as escrow. Escrow is nothing more than a service to ensure that nothing goes back against the property, and it's actually a convenience for the bank just as much as it is for the landowner. And, you know, some of these things could be getting put into place too to ensure that there's funding there for those landowners. If they're, especially if they come in on a low income side, if they're applying for low income loans or things like that, where that system's put into place and it's part of the requirement to purchase the land. Take them off the taxpayer side of it. So, but in the meantime, we know some of these are out there, so we gotta try to help them out. So that's my little soapbox. All right, any other discussion on those? Hearing none, let's move on to item 3. Cover crop contract payments, last page, I think, back page.
Yep. And so we have a number of cover crop payments, and I will pass this around, and all but one are from Wabasha SWCD. Eric Bergen was the one for Winona County. In Winona County, they did 22 cover crop payments this fall, or projects, and 2 of them were in the Whitewater, and of the 2, one got completed successfully, and the other one, they didn't get planted on time. Time just ran away from them. So, anyway, but Jenna is here, and she could probably speak more fluently about, because she worked out with everyone, so.
Yes. Yeah, so each of the folks here from Waukesha County, I've worked with them from start to finish for the whole contracting process. So I guess I'm not sure, do you want to hear more about how the contracting process works, or what they planted, or what's kind of some curiosities you might have that could elaborate?
A little bit, maybe?
A little of both?
Yep.
Yeah, so actually this year we got quite a lot of interest in cover crop planting. My phone was pretty much ringing off the hook from early September, end of August, all the way up until November 1st. So since we follow the NRCS practice standard for cover crops, the practice standard has November 1st as the planting deadline for your winter hardy cereal grains, or there's one brassica that's winter hardy, it's winter camelina. But all of these contracts, I believe, were winter rye, except for Eric Klein had planted I think 7-way cover crop mix. It included winter rye, but there was also barley and some legumes and some other things. So
You must have put that in a little early.
yes, yeah, he definitely was one of the earlier ones. Some of those species need to be planted, well, all of them by October 1st, so did a September planting there. But yeah, just kind of talking with them and asking what are your goals, what interested you in a cover crop. A lot of the interest came from, we kind of recently updated our county-wide newsletter. And so I put in the map of the Whitewater program, and then as well as cost share payments and pretty much the whole program. We also got some calls about septic repair and well sealing as well. So I would say the newsletters are working. People like to get mail. That's been something that's successful for us. And yeah, they just ended up calling me and did a farm visit or over the phone, or they came into the office and talked through, went through all of the NRCS practice standard, what's required, what options they have, talked about, timing, like what fields did they want to plant on, do they have corn or beans or canning crops or winter wheat, or, kind of get an idea of their timeline to offer some suggestions and what might work best. And then
Just
also,
review if you want to see
I'm not the most fluent in farm machinery, but giving them, some ideas on where to look if, they've never done cover crops before, and they're like, well, can I use my corn planter for rye, or, can I make this work? And most of the time referring them to somebody that's done it before, because that's not my area of expertise, but, kind of working through those obstacles. They can drill it, they can broadcast supply, and there's different seeding rates that are required, and it's all based on pure live seed. So pure live seed isn't always listed on the seed tag, so that's an education piece. They always put the percent purity and percent germ of the seed, and so walking them through, this is exactly what you need to plant to get the payment to be verified based on the practice standard. So really trying to drive those home. And then, yeah, part of the reason I'm here today is because hopefully all these checks will be signed, and they'd like those by the end of the year. So hoping to get them to them today. And
We're sending them
So
home with you.
I'll give them to her, and then she's gonna hand deliver them so that they have a Christmas Has there been any talk about using the roller crimper?
Not with any of these contracts. Definitely, mentioned it. Roller crimper can be tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've had one organic producer that used it, and it was his first time using it. And the reason why it's tricky is because you can use it on winter rye, but winter rye is so hardy. Like, even when you're putting it on pretty late in the year, a lot of that seed, by spring is popping up and can be hard to kill, especially if you're organic. And so the timing matters is because it has a determinate growth stage and an indeterminate growth stage. So what that means is at one point if you cut it, it'll grow back, but if it reaches that determinate growth, then it won't. And so that determinate growth is when the seed head starts coming out. So you have to make sure the plant is fully mature before putting the roller crimper over it. Otherwise, it'll lay down and then it'll just pop back up.
Right back up, and then it throws a seed in, and then you got seed in your seed. And it can be a very difficult process, and I remember 20 years ago trying to make this thing work, and as good as it sounds on paper, and again, as good as it sounds at a seminar, it's a difficult thing, and it's not for everybody. I tell everybody, can you afford a disaster on years, 2 and 10 years, right? So you say, well, not 1 in 5, and I'll say it could be years 6 and 7 in a row. You don't know, and that's where it depends on weather, it depends on how good of a job you do. There's so many things that come with it. So it is a 100% walk before you run process. It can be done. It's not a bad thing. I've seen it work out phenomenal, and I've seen absolute disasters. So
I did 14 acres. I mean, 2 7-acre things. Not good luck this year, but I'm gonna try it again, but just on a small amount. Someone asked.
you don't quit, do you?
I was gonna do more.
So yeah, I've seen it. I've worked in North Dakota and South Dakota before, and I've seen people planted rye, but they harvested the seed, so it wasn't necessarily their cover crop. But they had a type of header that just took just the seed head off and left all that straw up, and then they went and roller crimped it. But again, it's a bigger operation. They've been doing it for several years. It was a show plot one.
And the thing, so we do a lot of work in the Dakotas too, in Montana, and get on some pretty interesting. Out there, it's well, I'm gonna try a little wheat. Well, what's a little wheat? Oh, just 1,000 acres. Yeah, these are big farms around out there.
It's like,
oh yeah. Well, they don't have ag combine. They've got 4,
all running at the same time.
combines running at the same time. The guy down in Iowa we worked last year or this fall. I said, "Hey, Doug, how's it going?" He goes, just can't get anything done. I said, "Why is that, Doug?" I only got 6 of my 11 combines going right now. That's what happens when you're on 40,000 acres. So, it's just crazy, some of the farms that are out there nowadays. But yeah, it does. And, they're accustomed. And the thing they have is a lot more arid soils. And so we don't tend to see the white molds. We don't tend to see the disease in those situations. We see a little competition for moisture sometimes, but if the plant's truly dead, we don't have a growing competition. So they can get away with a few things that, as you move back to the east, that are a little more challenging. So again, it's a little bit, you gotta understand where you're at and what you're doing to make some of these things work. And some things are easier some places and they're harder in others,
I got one thing that might be relevant was what I tried this year. I had my neighbor combine off the top of the rye over the top of beans. Now, I don't know if that's gonna be as good if we get more moisture and the beans grow faster. I don't know that, so that could be the variable. But I think it's the University or North Dakota or whatever, they did a study with feeding steers, which I do, and you can use up to 1/4 of your grain can be rye, and you get the same growth as corn. So if you have cattle, I still think cattle are a pretty integral part of a lot of this conservation, even though some people don't like cattle, but they're very beneficial in a lot of ways to make things work.
Yeah, we used to actually feed, even milk cows, we'd feed 5 pounds of barley or something. We'd crack it or grind it.
So then you got a way to use that anyway, so.
Yeah, I do agree, like, with the cover crop funds that are all coming in, finding ways, especially, if someone doesn't have livestock, but, this can still be used as forage, well, I guess there's policy. If they have to use it on their, if they're gonna use it for forage, it has to be for their own livestock, 'cause they can't.
sell
get-
it?
Yeah, they can't sell the forage, because the point is to have that cover and that organic matter going back into the ground. But if you are a livestock producer, I mean, and this year with it being so dry, there was lots of people looking for, you know, pasture that wasn't overgrazed or dried up or, you know, those sorts of things. So,
Cows are a good thing.
yeah.
Manure is a good thing.
Yeah, it's the regenerative ag idea of, you know, the whole system and not getting too siloed into like one option or the other.
Does a farmer get paid for planting the cover crop or for growing the cover crop? Is there- After their success.
Hey, give us a break. Doesn't mean it's gonna come.
Yeah, so I mean, we can't control the weather, so as long as they're following the practice standard and everything, you know, and they're controlled to have it, set it up to grow. I mean, these are cover crops that were planted this fall. A lot of them being rye won't be terminated until the spring, so we pay after planting. And then I actually have some pictures. So I go out and do the field verifications, and then I take pictures. Some of them were before emergence, just on timing, and I don't know if you guys just want to pass these around. So like for instance, the one that's on top, that was before emergence. I go in and I like make sure that the seed's in the
there,
ground.
yep.
You can see the drill lines, and then I've driven past since, and it's been a, you know,
Green's coming
beautiful
up.
establishment. So, yes.
Okay, well, I think that's the difference. You know, you might have farmers jealous of our program, but we're only gonna pay if you're successful. So,
Well,
your payment is based on how tall that cover crop gets before you kill it off.
and really even a cover crop to a certain extent, it depends on the carbon density that, and how it will have an impact on the soil, because when you have simple carbon complexes, they really don't honestly build soil. They will capture nutrients, they'll capture energy from the sunlight, they'll retain nutrients, they'll help with wind erosion, you know, with soil erosion, but they don't necessarily build the soil because the carbon complexity is too simple. So, but they still have a very, very big benefit to the land, and they have a very big benefit to the ROI for that production agriculture. When you start stacking carbon compounds and you begin to go from hemicellulose to cellulose to lignified chitin type materials, those type of materials have the complexity that can actually be broke down through a series of processes that turn to that humic substance in the soil for that water retention, sponging, that's kind of that tilth, things like that. So there is a difference between when you have to look at something green and growing and how it gets managed and plowed down, a certain amount might be, you know, taken off or not taken off. Ultimately, it's all really good, but height does, to a certain extent, dictate it, but it's really carbon complexity that dictates what it's really gonna do for that soil. When it comes to actually, you know, building organic matter or humic substances or things like humus. So, yeah, so, you know, the thing that I say with cover crops, 20 years of doing it, just do it, and regardless, just be mindful of what you're trying to do. This is gonna really feed the crop and do the first things. These are gonna build, you know, the organic matters and the things that you're after, but it's all good. Every last bit of it's good, no matter how you do it. So,
Yeah, and there's the nutrient scavenging component, there's weed suppression component,
Exactly.
like lots of other benefits. Another thing that I've been doing with the cover crop contracts that we have is, my background's in agronomy, so I have the soil health interest, and obviously there's this big push for soil health. So doing soil health assessments with them, especially if they've never done a cover crop before, or they're going through like a change, like a management change from, you know, they used to mold or plow, and now they're trying to work in some no-till fields or years where they don't put in tillage. And kind of showing them, you know, a visual of like, okay, this is what your soil aggregation or soil stability is. So having good soil structure can help with that drainage and moisture availability too. So showing them, we just basically did a slump test, which was a really cool thing for them to see. I took a sample from their plowed field, I took a sample from their no-till field, and then from the field edge, like the forested field edge. And they could see the soil color being very different. So their plowed field was a more pale, less organic matter, and then obviously the field edge super dark. and how it stays resilient to being completely saturated with water, and kind of talking through, if you were a microbe or a worm or a bug, would this be a good habitat for you? If you were a plant root, where would you go? Would this be easy for you to grow? Would this be hospitable? And so kind of talking through those things and seeing, hopefully, over the years, they want to continue to implement cover crops, and hopefully you can see that change in soil structure improvement. But I mean, it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take years.
It doesn't. And the thing I've said since the beginning of these taxpayer-funded programs is that I did not want to create another dependent program for a farmer to be on. The goal was use taxpayer money to educate, show an ROI, take them off, and now farmer, you're on your own. You go keep doing this, and don't get hung up that you gotta do the whole farm. Even if you do 10% every year, it's better than doing nothing. That was always my mission with this, was never to create a dependency, but it goes back to that education. One more move in the education rather than the regulation form. And I think if we can stay on that and, give that message out to the taxpayer that, hey, this is a good thing, but we're not creating dependency. So thank you for what you're doing.
I think,
Thanks for coming.
go ahead, Jane.
No, I'm just curious, why is this whole cover crop thing, it seems like it's such a new thing.
Oh.
It's not.
I mean,
It's not. I think kind of what you were saying earlier is there's been a big cultural shift as far as acceptance, and people starting to realize like, oh, these cover crops do work, and it's not, the crazy people that are doing them. They've witnessed on their neighbors' fields. Farmers are very observant of their fields and other people's fields. So,
James, I think the easiest way to, when I say I've been laughed off from farms years ago and earlier in my career, that's a true statement. And I always say, for whose benefit is it, right? There was, and I don't mean this in a facetious way, but you have to remember that, part of that message was capturing nutrients, retention of nutrients, better soils, better crops, healthier crops, less need for sides. That was the message that I promoted for years, even though I'm in that industry and I own fertilizer plants. I literally, like the big plants, I have all this stuff, but I would still go out and separate myself from what I called conventional ag and say, hey, there's a better way to do this. And we don't need all these things, and we can minimize some of these things, but you have to learn together. There was opposition to that because it dove into their pocket. So it was snake oil, it was weird, you don't need that, put some more urea on, right? Don't go down that road because it takes the dependency off from them. Does that make sense? So there was a lot of opposition to that for many, many years. And I'll use Stan Krennermacher up on the ridge, because for a lot of years, oh yeah, and old Stan, even, I forget who he told the other day, he goes, damn, that old Elsing, he's been right all these years. So, you see the shift, and it's changing, and but there was a lot of opposition from a lot of companies to this because it really went against what they were doing,
So is it essentially the ag companies that were trying to
Farmers'
convince
mindsets, ag
producers,
companies.
farmers, that this is the way they got to
snake
do it?
oil, weirdo, voodoo,
It's kind of the way,
pick a name.
kind of the way we've always done it,
Yeah, we'll just keep doing it the
We
same
relied
way.
on the fertilizer company.
Even when I first started farming, I'm not gonna name names, but someone from one of the local fertilizer chemical companies said, you should put on 2 pounds of atrazine in the fall.
Is that all?
Alfalfa ground, Make sure you get that.
Hit her done.
And who really knows until you start doing some reading and get some other opinions.
Right. Well, for the sake of keep moving on, we do need a motion to approve the cover crop contract, unless there's any other discussion.
Sorry, a different avenue or a different direction on the discussion, double dipping. How do you prevent producers from double dipping? I don't recognize Eric Bergen, he's a Winona County farmer, I don't remember if he applied for cost share funds from Winona County SWCD or not, but is there, are you talking with Winona, you receive an applicant, what is the protocol? You receive an applicant, for your cost share fundings, are you reaching out to Winona County? Hey, you've got a producer in Winona County that's applied for my funding here. Are you already funding him? Do we want multiple funding sources to the producer? You know, I am a producer. It costs money to plant cover crops. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's not a magic bullet. It's only one little piece. And in our case, it only is a good viable piece because we are production agriculture for livestock. So our livestock consumes a large amount of winter rye forage, and it's almost like a double crop. You can produce forage and have 6 foot high windrows, incredible tonnage. If you do not terminate the cover crop, tremendous forage source. But so we have incentive to feed our animals, and you know, but it costs us money to plant and to buy the seed, and it's a lot of labor and a lot of planning and a lot of stuff during a very busy time of year when we're all trying to harvest. So I'm just, how do you prevent double dipping? Should you prevent double dipping?
So as far as like using it for forage and like that definitely has, you know, benefit if you're a livestock producer because you're not having to buy that cutting. If it's your own, and I just kind of, I guess on that side it would be more honor system of like, this is, if you're harvesting for forage, it's for your animals. You know, you're not supposed to sell it. There's not really a great way for us to police that, but as far as producers having acres in multiple counties, for the Whitewater program, we're clearly communicating, hey, I have this contract with this person, these are where the fields are, and this is how many acres. Different cost share programs in different counties have different policies. So for Wabasha County, our policy is to pay cost share up to 100 acres for cover crops. So for instance, we have someone who has cover crops in Wabasha County, and they also have it in Goodhue County. So, you know, in Goodhue County they have 60 acres, and Wabasha County they have 40 acres, because their policy is also 100 acres, or the grant policy is 100 acres. To kind of base it off of that, like what those rules are.
So even like you're just saying, hey, you go to Winona, SWCD, get a deal, then go over there, get a deal, then go to this person, you know, is that what you were alluding to, Russ?
Yeah, well, yes and no. So if the goal of the subsidy is to, you know, incentivize and then educate and then cut off the subsidy, is that a protocol that you are following and everybody's following, or it's too new yet maybe? But the flip side of my bringing up anything is separate, different producer, organic producer contacted me in Winona County and said, your pay levels are too low, Homestead County is triple, and I need more money to help pay for my costs. So can he dip into the pocket of Winona SWCD and dip into the pocket of Whitewater River Watershed Project to get funding from both? Because he claims his costs are, and he's an organic producer, he probably is paying more for his seed, and Winona's only covering a fourth of it. He needs more financial help. So, you know, I'm just making you aware of multiple things that it's very complicated.
Yeah, definitely.
But what should I tell my guy? He's called me twice. He's like, I need more money to help me pay for this next year, or I'm not gonna do it, or I'm gonna cut back. You know, and then the public suffers because he's cutting back, and so.
Well, I've got a short answer to that. If he still needs money, somebody hasn't showed him the benefit yet. He hasn't seen what he needs to see. And the idea is that, you know, if you don't go looking for it, you ain't gonna find it either. And that's one of the big things that we see. So it's never gonna be a continuance indefinitely. So the challenge, I would say, is, hey, X, Y, Z. Is there a way we can show you this?
So I disagree slightly, because it's an ongoing public watershed benefit. Then the public, you know, it would be in their best interest to continue to fund a practice that
So it's a water
helps everyone. No. I
Oh.
guess I worded that wrong, but it helps the public watershed. It helps the water quality for all producers to establish. And maybe I do like Mark's comment about, are you paying them to plant it, or are you paying for growth? I think we should pay them for growth, pay for the result, you know. And then if you had poor weather, well, at least you tried. But I don't know. I'm just making a counterpoint, Josh, to let's educate and then pull the funding. In this guy's case, he's not going to do it anymore. So then that's what you're going to run into. he tried it, but if the public really wants it, then the public's gotta help pay for it. That's his message.
I guess my question would be, if you did it 3 years, and I don't even know if I know the answer to this, then what? Are people gonna keep getting this subsidy for like 15, 20 years? When's the cutoff come?
Yeah, there's no way that a local entity can sit here and fund all of agriculture. It would just be an astronomical cost. So the idea is that, hey, the landowner, we want to help you out. It's a method in which to help out with. Nobody's requiring you to do this, but at the same time, if we know there's, to say there isn't a positive benefit is to say that the program in itself shouldn't exist. Right? So we know there's a positive benefit. It's not just for the water table or whatever that might be. It goes beyond that for production agriculture and soil retention and, you know, all the things that come with this. And one of the things that I'll have to go back and disagree with that is that growth does not mean success. Define growth, because I could give you all the conclusive evidence where, you know, cover crops this tall still pay for themselves on a financial basis. When we look at nitrogen reduction, the percentage of nitrogen that's in there, the energy that's captured, the percentage of phosphorus and potassium that's captured, and looking at just physically harvesting all that and doing a very simple to like a feed test on it to say, hey, there's X amount in a tonnage in an acre. There's an obscene amount of NP and K we just gathered from the soil and put it into a collated form. And once it's in a collated form, it can't leave. And now it's there. And because it's bound to a simple carbon structure, the following crop can access it very, very easy. Versus if we grow it taller, we associate tall with good or height, or with maturity. As we complex the nutrients into that carbon cycle, it's harder for the next growing crop to pull it back out. So, and then it begins to actually tie up nitrogen, because we need to put more nitrogen out there to break that material down to extract the benefit back out. So oftentimes when we see very large biomasses tilled under, we actually have to increase our nitrogen usage to break that material. Now she's shaking her head, because it is an actual direct tie-up to nitrogen. So there's a happy medium here in agriculture where you have to kind of balance out what it is that you're trying to do, whether you've got an N-fixated crop going into that, or whether you have a grass crop, corn is a grass crop, that needs nitrogen. So I don't know if we're ever going to be able to associate height to success, because it's all relative to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, depends on the goal. And you know, with rye, because I did get a lot of questions about that this fall. They're like, okay, so it's dry, I put it in the ground, what if it doesn't grow?
Yeah.
It will in the spring.
It will in the spring, and I mean, you know, a lot of them, their goal is soil health, their goal is soil structure. It'll grow in the spring and it'll produce quite a bit of roots, and that's what they want. And so, especially for rye, I mean, going into winter, if you can get, you know, 12 to 15 or, you know, inches of root growth underground, but you only have like a little bit of green on top, that's, you know, still doing plenty good. As much as we want to see all of that bare ground covered, there's, you know, the roots are doing their part as well. So
There's just as much biomass underneath as there is on top when you come to cereal grains.
Isn't it true though that with most cover crops, the taller the plant is, the deeper the roots grow?
There is that side of it too, but I don't want to make a case that the only benefit is if we see height, because
Not
there's
only, but-
plenty of benefits besides that.
yeah,
So,
and what you're getting into is the carbon nitrogen ratio
Correct.
and how long it takes for that to break down. So you know, have a lot of growth on the top and a lot of that straw. I mean,
that's
same-
high carbon, dense carbon.
Yeah, same with your corn stalks. Like that takes a lot of time for that to break down.
Takes a lot of nitrogen to break it down.
Yeah.
And so what we tend to see when we see quote unquote any crop get ahead, it's why there's a yield drag with corn on corn. We've changed the system of what feeds on it. It becomes a fungal dominated system. And because of the complexity of the material, it actually takes more nitrogen to grow a corn on corn crop per bushel than what it tends to following a legume of some sort, soybeans, whatever it is, because we've got, not only do we have an induced or an inherent lack of nitrogen in the soil, but we also had a carbon complexity working against us at the same time. So what we tend to see in ag is that when we have a lot of biomass to break down, we actually see nitrogen usage go up. It's counterintuitive.
And if you're putting more chemical on to manage your corn, you're also putting a lot of stress on the microbes that will be breaking
And we
down.
tend to see higher fungicide applications with a lot of biomass
Yeah.
because they hold and store disease and insect pressure.
So then it's killing what you need to break down the stocks to make the
Correct.
nutrient available.
It's a vicious cycle. The fungicide thing is a vicious cycle. And so one of the big things that I say in the industry right now is 10 years ago, you never heard of the fungicide. 8 years ago, you heard about it. 5 years ago, you put your first pass on. 3 years ago, you put your second pass on. Now you're contemplating third pass. Are you farming to figure out how many passes of fungicide you can get on in a year? No. Okay, then what are you doing about it? Where is it coming from? Why is this phenomenon getting worse? And a lot of it is nutrient cycling or carbon cycling or residue cycling. So we've got to be careful about pushing biomass equals good because there aren't all, it isn't all it's cracked up to be. So this is good. I've been asked this question for 2 decades. At what point was it worth going out, spending the money on seed, spending the money on the fuel, the hired man, the tractor hours, whatever it is, where do I get my payback? And I said, having done hundreds of thousands of acres of cover crop, if you can see a tinge of green across that field, it was probably worth every dollar. Because the amount of stored energy and nutrients captured in that tiny little plant, it's like having a whole bunch of little AA batteries out there. Millions of them. And it's just an obscene amount of energy in that simple complex that's obtained from the sun. And we see it right to the row, even when people just have these little deals, that come up and how it can change crops. So, and just that little bit, just to hold that wind back, just to hold that soil. So I think it can be good from any level. We just have to understand the complexity of it. I don't know, Ross, if we'll ever get taxpayer funded full-fledged
So
deals, but
just to piggyback on that double dipping question, so any of these contracts we approved, are they 3-year contracts, I believe,
Single year.
single year? So, can they come in next year and
Mhm.
get funding again?
For the same
For this grant,
acreage.
yes.
Yeah.
But it isn't the real question then is, do we have a method to make sure that this 80 acres is not getting paid from us and by one or
Right.
2 other
Correct.
sources?
Yeah.
That's essentially your question.
Yeah.
because the goal was to get it on as many farmers, as many acres as we could.
Right, but I think
Yeah.
that should, if we're trying to spread our dollars to get it on more acres, let's do the education part and limit them to 3 years, and then, hopefully they've learned that the benefits and we're not continually paying them.
That's exactly my point, and I think, and Mark, I completely understand the height and the growth concept. One of the biggest ones that we see turn people away from cover crops is actually overgrowth. Because it creates a lot of complexities in the following crop, and a lot of it's nitrogen management, a lot of it's, gets back away from you, the roller crimp concept. They don't understand that all that biomass is gonna be just like all the biomass in corn stalk. David Hooley's a world record holder. Him and I have supper every year. And he actually uses a residue breakdown tool that we have. And he's a world record. He just broke the record again, 623 bushel. You see that? And he very well renowned, speaks all over the world. And he uses our residue breakdown tool. And he could care less about the 3.5 bushel he sees. He says, do you know how much trash, Josh, 623 bushel corn makes? It's a lot. And so he's got a problem, because to go plant into that material again the following year is just such an obscene amount of material. And he knows that just dumping a whole bunch more nitrogen on there doesn't work. That was the way we did it in the 2000s. And we realized we oxidized all the minerals, we gassed off all the carbon as carbon dioxide, we didn't capture any of it. You can accelerate residue, but you have to do it naturally. If you do it synthetically or chemically, it's 4 processes to create humus, and humus is your ultimate sponge. That's the true benefit of residue or decomp. So at the end of the day, the trend in the industry to deal with this biomass, whether it's tall cover crops, corn, residue, whatever it is is the acceleration through a bacterial or biological process. We've learned that that system will still create the ultimate goal and benefit, and we can still access the minerals back out of that residue. And it helps lessen the need for additional nitrogen when we have a lot of biomass.
It's too bad there's not more profitable crops to be able to have rotation. These people have.
Oh, I've said for
rotation, and it works out.
said for many years, if anything were to ever be subsidized, yeah. Well, the 100 years, the 100 years is alludes to going back 100 years.
Yeah, tourist, HR.
Yeah. The 100 years is if we could go back 100 years and look at agriculture different, would we subsidize agriculture different? I would subsidize a third crop. That would change agriculture.
That makes everything work better.
That's what I'm saying. So if we could go back 100 years, my brain got in front of my mouth there. If we could go back 100 years and know what we know today, I don't think we'd ever be subsidizing corn and beans. We'd be subsidizing a third crop, and it would alleviate a lot of problems.
So isn't that essentially what our program is trying to do too, is encourage oats, small grains?
It does, but not on a production aspect.
It does on a production aspect.
Yeah. What's that?
It does on a production aspect. I mean, we're paying farmers to plant oats as their third rotational crop.
Your program does.
And
Yeah.
they're marketing that as food
Yep.
grade oats.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And we tried that with General Mills. So I was one of the crazy guys with the heart healthy thing on General Mills. I actually worked with their head researcher, Tom Raby, put together that program for nitrogen reduction for the Walmart mandate. Firsthand, I was the guy doing that with the little heart healthy thing on the Cheerios box, and showed them how to reduce their N by 44, actually almost 60%. Double debated blue cans, did all these wonderful things, created a subsidy program through the marketing program for General Mills that we were paying almost double what oats were for everybody else. And you want to know what shut it down? The purchasers. Purchasers get paid to go contract with the farmers as cheap as they possibly can, and here we were out doubling what we would pay for oats if they were grown our way, right? So they were buying oats out for $2.22 in South Dakota, and we were paying $4. And the marketing department and the purchasing department said, whoa, wait a minute, and I went all the way to the CEO and they had to kibosh the whole thing, and then they said, well, let's go do it in Canada then. So then they asked me to move to Northwest North Dakota, which is where they import everything through from Canada into North Dakota for the States. And that's where they also had the Roundup deal that they got in trouble for because there was contamination coming across. They don't even make a GMO load. And I mean, so you get into these scenarios where it's all good until you can't find a market for it. And when you don't have a market, people walk away. And that's the issue with alternative markets. That's why the hemp market went, right? Everybody ran to it, and then it flooded it, and then it went like that, all within 2 years. So it's always been the challenge in these third crops that are grown in areas that weren't necessarily designed or aren't currently growing them. You know, go to Montana, it's all wheat. There's very little soybeans. But you come over here, nobody's growing wheat, you know? So it's always been an issue that it's regionalized as to what is being grown. And so their rotation just flip-flops between two things, corn, wheat, corn, wheat, corn, wheat, and then occasionally throw some soybeans in. Around here it's corn, beans, and occasionally we'll throw some oats in. But it's to find the profitable outcome of that crop that makes it so difficult, because as soon as something comes up, the market gets flooded, the market goes away, and then nobody wants to do it again. And so that's always been the challenge. And so then it goes back to, can the taxpayer subsidize it to make it somewhat profitable for agriculture to continue to do it? And then even if they do, well, do they dump it into the river if nobody wants it? What do you do with the crop? You know?
So back to my original comment, sorry to interrupt. So, and Josh, you have tremendous knowledge in agronomy and other things that are way over our heads, and I respect that greatly, but I have to advocate for my constituent. My constituent said, I need more money, and I could get into a conversation, profit margins on farms, you know, is way down and very slim, and this person has employees, and the new employee, sick and safe leave law that starts January 1st is going to put him behind the 8 ball, and in 2 years, don't even get me started on that conversation.
Exactly.
And he is a producer that's producing just, okay, him and I, comparable, I'm a dairy producer, we milk roughly 500 cows. We're competing against the guy in Texas. There is one owner in Texas who milks 60,000 cows. 60,000, and he competes against me. So this environmental stuff is gonna force, like you said, the small guys out first.
That's right.
We're gone, because Walmart doesn't care. Would Walmart wanna deal with a 500 of us?
That's right.
To achieve the same volume that they can make one phone call. So it's economies of scale. Anyway, profit margins are so slim, especially for this guy. He needs every penny. I'm gonna tell him to call Jenna. That's what I'm gonna tell him. In the short term, next year, call Jenna, so I gotta advocate for him. But long term, there's gonna be more people that find out about that, and they're gonna be calling you a lot. And they're gonna call Winona County, and they're gonna call anybody that will give them a penny. Because there's gonna be some major struggles happening in the ag sector, so.
Yeah.
And that was what I alluded to at the subcommittee, is that by just, without understanding the economics, so the third thing that I testified was exactly what you're talking about. You cannot put a financial burden in some sort of genre of what you're trying to accomplish to a local sector, because we are all competing in global and national markets. The dairy farmer is not competing with the local creamery and that local creamery. He's competing with milk coming out of Canada, other states, the south side of the state. This is no longer, if you start driving all this home in a local fashion, and there's no way to help that local area out, they're just gonna drop out. They're gonna quit, they're not gonna do it, whether it's animal production, hogs, beef, lamb, just standard agriculture, no organic, it doesn't matter. And that was my big message, is that we're not in a local market when it comes to agriculture. We competing with Brazil, China, Russia, India. And if we can't produce grain and food for what they can, we got a big issue. So that goes back to the education over regulation, and saying there has to be a consistent source of funding to help educate and train and change farmers' mentalities to show them better profitability. Because if you come in through regulation and there's no subsidization, you will see them quit. And the bigger it'll get bigger, family farms will leave, and more 60,000 cow dairies will go up, and more guys complaining they only got 6 out of their 11 combines.
If you want to transfer some of these costs to farmers from the more urban areas, why couldn't we set up districts where we essentially, if you meet a certain standard, then your tax rate goes down? So it's almost like they have TIF districts in cities to advocate for putting up businesses and stuff like that. If your farm is certified as a water healthy farm, then your tax rate
The problem, Mark, is that what I'm hearing is that
That's a
actually
great idea. It's a great
the urban
idea.
district wants to put this expense on the farmer.
right, and the urban district
That's what they're
urban district benefits from a healthier
I don't
environment.
disagree, but right now that narrative is backwards.
No, but I think the younger generation is willing to pay. They're willing to swallow that cost to have a better environment to live in.
Well,
And
just
if
at the meeting.
If it financially can't work for the farmer to do that, then that's the way to accomplish it.
I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying though is the current narrative that we're hearing from state and these organizations is, you owe me a water filter system. That's what's happening
Well,
right now.
there's some validation to that.
Right.
I mean,
But I don't think it's their fault.
The aquifers
You know.
are generally polluted, generally from farming activities from decades ago, okay? We farm better now, we're taking pollutants out, we're not.
But I don't think the farmer should foot the bill to buy that.
The government's essentially putting the bill, and farmers pay taxes just like you, just like I pay taxes, That's how it's going, but if we want to continue to improve it, it's gotta be profitable. You're not gonna do this just because you're having fun at it, Ross, you want to be able to
Correct.
feed your family. So if we want to get to the point that we have a great environment to live in, we gotta make it work. So that's the way we work. Just as the farmer pays for the jail in Winona County, that'll primarily be filled with urban residents, because the closer you live together, the more likely you're gonna commit a crime with somebody. The urban residents are gonna pay for the farmers to improve their practices so that we have great waterways and safe water to drink.
I don't disagree with it, but what I'm saying though, Mark, is right now, the consensus that I'm hearing at all these meetings, including all the way up to the Capitol, is not that. It's the urban people are saying, you wreck my water and you're gonna pay for it.
Right.
And putting a burden on the farmers to say, you can't expand, until you fix the problem. You can't do anything until you fix the problem, and in the meantime, you're gonna figure out how to foot the bill, because you were the problem all along.
Yeah, but the farmer can't.
That's what
the
needs
farmer
to
can't
change.
print money, but this can be fixed at a local level. The counties can.
I don't disagree, but what I'm
County can
saying
set up
is
a
that,
district. Winona County can set up a TIF district, and you could get you could get one of those urban commissioners to join you if you present it as an environmental concern.
I agree, the problem is getting them to think that way.
Well, and I think you can if you work at it.
That's gonna be the difficult part, because right now the narrative is you did the damage, you foot the bill.
Well, yeah, but
I don't
who's
disagree.
footing the bill? Daily Farm's footing the bill?
Ross?
Great, you're
Farmers.
footing the bill? I mean, where's that money coming
You
from?
guys farm?
The EPA was on a farm a quarter mile from my mailbox, so they're coming.
They're coming after
They're
you.
not
Well,
leaving
they're gonna be
anything
all
alone,
over
but-
southern Minnesota now since this.
It's a great concept, but right now we're 180 degrees from that. What's actually happening? I'm not theoretically talking, I'm talking, Mark, what's happening right now. The narrative today, this isn't a concept, this isn't fictitious. The narrative today is, farmer, you caused the damage, you're gonna figure out how to pay for it. That's the narrative. We gotta get to where you are right now, but they don't even wanna listen. This is we're gonna shut you down, you can't expand, and you're gonna figure out how to pay for this. That's part of the Senate thing that I went to, is to say, whoa, 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 hold on here. We don't know where all these problems come from, and even if the farmer had something to do with it, we know that there's different things here. But we can't expect them to foot the bill for this.
We can't change the past. I mean, we can determine where majority of the contamination came from, but we can't change the past. So we can only change the future.
Right.
So, but we can
But the
change.
narrative is you pay for it.
But you're not gonna change it at the state senate.
I'd have to disagree with that actually, because, I mean, particularly since being District 1 Commissioner, which is Rochester, that I'm looking at this from, okay, I think it's great, like the 30-33 plan that it used to be for the cover crops, and now it's sort of gotten 50-50-50 or whatever. That's fine, that's cool. I mean, that's something that should be encouraged. There's a valid point to having incentives for doing some of these practices that, I mean, you could argue people should have been doing them all along, but if they weren't, maybe this is the only way to get them to incorporate that into their practices and into their procedures. I mean, there's a number of other aspects to that that seems to be just totally tilted toward rural areas, which I think some of the aspect of that should go into urban areas as well, because other than going to Earth Day or County Fair exhibit or whatever, there's very little being done in the city, even though I hear complaints on field days that, well, it's not us that is creating the problems, it's the city and their over-fertilized lawns and the golf courses and et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think, obviously, most of that funding, I think, should go to the producers, to the rural areas, but be nice to see a little bit of it coming into the city as well.
I wish the urban population, what I feel, I'm gonna say what I feel and what I see, is that there's a disconnect between urban and rural, and we're seeing it grow. And I feel as though, from talking to people, that they're almost demonizing agriculture and farmers. And the assumption that I see and feel is that you're not doing it quick enough. We have a problem. You don't know what's best for you. We're gonna step in and tell you how to do it from here on out. And you're gonna figure out how to foot some of that bill. And what my fear is that I wanna make sure that we don't see that continue to happen. And I wanna change the narrative from where I see it going to more what Mark is talking about, and more what Ross is talking about before it's too late. And how do we know that? Why do you think we went to set the subcommittee? That's a group of people saying, we're gonna, no more CAFOs, we're shutting this down. The Duismas, we're gonna start to do it, and you need to start paying attention and want to declare, literally declare an emergency. Which emergencies now grant power to certain legislative people coming in and saying, well, I'm sorry, Bob, but I'm not sure if this really, you're part of this or not, but this is the way you're gonna farm from now on until we get this fixed. And we don't know, very similar to what Mark said, we're finding things that we know are 50, 60 years old in the water that had nothing to do with these guys farming years ago, but you gotta fix it. And so my thing is before the regulation comes in, change the narrative, get it to what you're talking about, because I'm seeing the narrative go the other way. The farmers are bad, and you need to be told how to farm.
I don't doubt that you're seeing that up, because you're seeing that in your particular county board on just about every issue. It's
I'm saying way outside of the county.
Yeah,
Way
but
outside the county.
the only way it's gonna be fixed is at local.
I guess,
Not
And
gonna be-
I disagree with your thoughts on the young people. I look at my daughter and her.
No, I didn't say young people.
No,
Yeah, I said
but the-
urban people.
But the urban.
Urban people,
I mean,
not young people.
I look in our community and it's, I think there's a lot of support for agriculture. I really do.
For
Farming.
good agriculture. for-
Right,
Yeah.
right. And there's always, that 1%er out there
Sure.
that's,
I,
you're never gonna correct.
Well,
Yes, I could-
but if you look at what's coming down from the state, this is not happening locally.
Right.
Nobody locally said, hey, let's throw this whole southeast Minnesota into something. This is outside groups and organizations
Well,
coming in pushing.
it's a local group that
Well,
spearheaded it.
it's local, but it's isolated to people that we're not talking about as far as good people. I call them not good people.
okay.
I believe it's spearheaded farther up than
Yeah,
what.
I'm just pointing out that if we don't
Wow.
fix it locally, then
I don't disagree.
then they're gonna fix it federally.
That's a good
That's not a
point.
good fix.
That's
That's a
exactly
big
right.
hammer.
Well, spearheaded higher up, because our whole political system is based on blame, passing back and forth. Nobody ever says, to be honest, America is a horrible, wasteful country with the Amazon truck coming and all that going in the landfill. And where do we rate on like the usage of resources and how that works? There's some kind of a deal at the end of the year, they always do, where which country's worse? My God, America uses like almost all of it.
Just look at all the packaging. I mean, look at all the waste. Yeah, we have a
So-
long ways to go.
So everybody needs to say, our country has things we could do better, let's work together. But that's the hard part, how do you get to that point?
I think the younger generation are at that point.
And I believe you that, I think they are willing
So
to.
step one, into Mark's TIF district, Commissioner Elsing. No, seriously, this is directed to you. What's the solution? Let's focus on the solutions. So a solution would be the Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certification is a certification of a good environmentally friendly farmer. Am I wrong, Peter? Am I wrong, Jenna? Minnesota Ag Water Quality Steward or whatever.
The Minnesota.
It's a certification.
The certification program, when that started, that was actually a discussion early on with the legislature about, can we, yes, you get the sign that you can put at the front of your yard, but can we make it mean something? Can we tie that to a tax credit?
So
Kind
let's
of
tie
like
it to
the-
a district.
Kind of like the landowners who have a forest stewardship plan, and you get a little tax credit on those acres that are in forestry management. That was discussed, and there were some barriers in that discussion, but it was a discussion, and I think there's a lot of merit to it.
But there is a tool that Commissioner
Right.
Elsing could
Uh-huh.
propose and take to the fellow commissioners to propose this TIF district idea and say, hey, these producers are willing to band together, our farm's already certified. But if we can recruit some neighbors and they want to become a TIF district of, environmentally friendly, independently certified, sustainable, that's a
But
start.
even-
That's a start and that's
Right.
one potential solution to take a step.
And then even looking at that scenario, and again, because a commissioner, I don't know it all, Mark's commissioner, none of us know it all, obviously he is too, but you know, there's a lot of idiosyncrasies with TIF districts just in the legal jurisdiction, because just because you're a TIF district doesn't mean it gets approved. It goes in front of school boards, and then it's legally, and I believe state bylaws say it can only be for a certain period of time. So it's not an indefinite thing. So, but again, but I get the
It's a
concept.
proactive thing.
Right.
You guys are
And it's
coming
a
for
way
us.
to
Well,
maybe-
look, we're already
Yep.
doing what you want us to do. You
And
know,
it might
what
be a
do you
way
want from us?
to segregate or separate the cost, maybe to the unwilling person that says, we don't feel like we should have to foot the bill. Give me my food cheap, but I don't want to pay any more for my food, right? And that says, well, if you want these things, you're going to pay for it one way or the other.
Right, if you want locally clean air and you want locally clean water, this is how we accomplish that.
And it might be a way to go about it a little bit different than necessarily looking through grants and other things to come into play.
You know, and I think Mark, Josh will agree with me. I was speaking with a Grace County Commissioner yesterday about the property tax system. I mean, it's broke.
Oh,
How it's gonna be fixed, I don't know. Yes, I would love to see a property tax reform for good stewardship.
yeah.
That would be awesome. But, you know, the whole system, and I don't foresee a complete overhaul coming anytime soon. But it's a broke system.
It is, and you look at all the small communities that I represent, and I mean, I've invested into 4 rural communities myself with properties, rentals, commercial rentals. But why? I could go to Winona, go to Rochester and buy them and guarantee almost they get rented out. But somebody's got to be the guy to do it. But when they raise my taxes, I don't get a break. And I pay just as much as anybody else does, with chances are getting a lot less this and a lot less that. So that's what we hear from the municipalities that say, well, these things are all fine and dandy, but man, we're already under such a heavy tax load, and we don't have infrastructure, we're becoming bedroom communities, you keep raising the taxes on us for whatever reason or project, and it makes it harder on us we can't attract anybody anymore. And so there's so many things that come into this tax system that make the complexity of how do I keep Little Elba going, how do I keep Little Altura going, you know? And, you know, Lewis says, going that way, it's not mine, it's Commissioner Ward's, but those are real problems when you go sit down with city councils and you go sit down with township officers. And, you know, it's so simple to just take it out of the taxpayer's funded pocket, but then you start getting all the opposition that says, well, wait a minute, we gotta foot the bill and we're already hurting. So you're right, that system is broke and it's difficult and there's so much complexity to it, because then you got all those constituents saying, well, here's my problem with doing that. And so I don't know if there is a good way, but I do like the ideas of trying to place, I don't want to call it a burden, try to span this potential cost over more people, and then make sure that we understand that we're in a global market. We have to compete with other areas that don't have all these laws. And that's gonna go to the federal level to make sure that whatever comes into this country, people are gonna have to understand, all this is gonna make their food costs go up. Ultimately, somewhere you're gonna pay for it.
Well,
We better move on here.
call the question.
Call the question. So, moving on with the
It's
cover
all
crop.
good discussion.
All good discussion, no, it's all good. Cover crop contract payments, so we just need a motion to approve that.
So,
Second.
Same to you. Talk about it. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries. All right, local advisory team grant.
Okay, so update for that, we had a meeting in June, and working with the farmers to develop these BMPs for that particular DUSMA. Of course, we had meeting in Altura and in Elgin, and the Utica one is on hold until the new well is drilled, and then they figure out what the new DUSMA boundary is, if there is a change. So that's kind of on pause for the time being, and our next meeting for both of them will be in January. So that Altura and Elgin. And so anyway, we got.
What's your vibe?
Well, I'm sure that this EPA petition isn't a positive thing with those in fact, that's on the agenda at the next meetings, to talk about the petition that was submitted to EPA and the state of Minnesota response to it. And I put at everybody's, this is the agency update from Emily Zanone from the MPCA. This is the, and I'm sure you've seen that this has been on the website and everything, but how the state is anticipating responding to the petition. And I guess, and I had a meeting, I've been in a number of meetings, and I know Josh has as well. I've been in 2 meetings with the MDH, and we got another one this afternoon. They're trying to figure out how to move forward with testing and providing alternative water sources that, you know, for people that need it. One thing that I did note in, you know, the petition to the EPA, one of their stipulations, they said, one of the things that they wanted to do was to find the source and make that particular farmer pay for, the, you know, and, but
Pay for
that's.
what?
Pay for the water,
That's right.
the alternative water. And, but
There's the
the
narrative.
Minnesota state response didn't mention that, you know, so that's good. But it does state, you know, in the petition, they were talking about, and this was the thing, you know, when you talk about the septic systems and the wells, ceilings and everything, I personally like the idea of, well, you know, if you have a home in the rural area, there are some personal responsibilities. And just to have somebody come in and pay for everything 100% without even paying a match, that's kind of a, you know, so does that mean that the federal government's also, or the state, or whoever's gonna also come in and pay for people who live in town their water bill? Because that's essentially what they're paying for, is drinkable water. You know, so I don't know, it is complex, and the state is working on a work plan that they are submitting to the EPA, and they will have it on the 15th of January. You know, they talked a little bit about this yesterday at the BOM meeting, but they said these are some of the things we're kind of looking at. It was just kind of a 30,000-foot view, but it wasn't, they didn't want to disclose because they said it's still being worked on. But I don't know.
We're seeing, like I said, we're seeing more of this narrative of, hey, you caused it, you fix it.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you testified, because we needed to have somebody articulating the other side, because I know that October 3rd subcommittee meeting, that was kind of, is that the one that you testified at, the October or the November one?
November 9th.
Okay.
Whatever the day of the county board meeting was,
Yeah.
I had to miss it.
14th, that's right.
Yeah, and it's a scary thing to see this, and to see what I'm gonna call an accelerated movement. I see a lot of push for more of this type of stuff, and in one aspect it's good, but in the other aspect it scares me, because you could throw agriculture in southeast Minnesota on its head, and I'm scared for that.
Sure. I think at the February meeting, I'd like to have maybe, if they're available, Don and Mike come and give an update on the local advisory team, and that would be after the January meetings, and
So
it might be good to hear from them.
are all the landowners in the Duismans participating?
No, they're not all participating.
I think there's, you know, my take, you know, having attended one of the meetings and obviously knowing who the growers were, first of all, there's a little bit of confusion, like, whoa, wait a minute, well, why, you know, I'm talking with people outside the meeting that I know from, and like all of a sudden, man, I feel attacked, and, you know, where's this all coming from, and what's my future look like? But, you know, there is that other side that, you know, some people need a little bump in the head, and like, hey, better pay. It's like I said with the buffer law. Hey guys, this is an easy one, right? It's an easy one. It's gonna get more complex if we don't start looking at changing some things and alternatives. And so you know, if we can, again, keep up with the pace and make the changes and do the things we need to do before laws are put into place, hopefully we can keep the system going.
Are you guys within the Altura Turismo?
We are just outside of it.
So I have land in both of them, I own properties in both of them. Agriculture and commercial. Do I need to sign any of these?
No, that
Just
was,
the check.
so I just needed your signatures on the checks and then
Since,
the administrative chaos for the cover crops.
so it's, I'm gonna let you check it, make sure. you got it.
Yeah.
Don't want me, I messed something up. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that there's good reception. I brought this up a little bit at the subcommittee too, that I said, hey, you know, my fear is that we don't see change in these duismas quick enough. They're gonna make the duismas bigger, and before you know it, all the circles are filled in, and then it just becomes law. Which, right now, the Secretary of Ag has the ability to set things into law, so needed. And so I just go back to say, let's give us time. Give us time, we're working at it. So,
Nobody ever wants to do less because it means less money. Because saying the smaller number of farmers or somebody that we can maybe manhandle and make them do whatever you want is the idea, I guess. But even in the larger sector, why are we going full bore now to try to throw away all our old cars and build all big new electric cars? And really, maybe if they made a law that everyone that could get by with a small economy car should drive one. And that would probably be enough right there, but no, that's not a good way to make big money. So that's what drives a lot of things.
I just going to take this moment to voice local producers, especially Winona County, have a theory. The Driftless National Park people failed with their initial mission, so this is a backdoor way that they are going. How else can we remove animal agriculture from Winona County?
Correct.
How else can we drive out production agriculture from southeast Minnesota so we can still get what we want? And guess how deep their pockets are. They have pro bono attorneys, they have a minefield of tremendous resources that they can use to fight us, but they're just gonna go about it this way, and that's why if we turn up the heat, we can accelerate their departure, and then the Driftless Park looks pretty appealing to producers. Hey, we'll take your land off your hands, we'll get rid of you and get what we want. So that.
amen.
Thanks for bringing that. I hadn't heard that.
So that's
That's
a
exactly
consensus
what-
among
100%.
producers that I
I
speak
believe-
with. That's where this is all coming from. And land stewardship, I don't know their position on the Driftless National Park or
We're
not.
against it. I can speak to you that I was involved with some of their moves against it. Most of the good portion of the opposition came from people like myself, Tim Aarons, and a few other people locally against it. They
Okay, good.
made it very clear to Sean
I do
and
too.
Katie where they stood. He was not allowed to reference them as supporting this at all because of just the opposition from their local members. And also, if he does, like he, in one of his videos, he referenced their soil health program, he had to make it very clear that it was simply a news story, it was not an endorsement. He had to make it clear that it was not, he couldn't imply that they were endorsing his ideas. So I can tell you right now that I've spoken with Sean Carroll, I've spoken with about 4 different staff people from LSP. The members of this county were adamantly opposed to it.
Okay.
And I know that because you should see, I mean, I don't agree with some of the, Steve Jacob on a lot of things, but, I mean, that was one of the strange things, with he and I and Tim Aarons and the Nelsons and a lot of other people, were very clear that we opposed it, and Sean Carroll listened to it, and he's like, there was no interest in them taking this up at all. I'm not gonna say they were in hardcore opposition to it, but they certainly did not support it, and they knew the members in this county did not support it. So, yeah, they were not part of pushing for this national park thing. In fact, they made it clear to Katie that he could not imply that they did support it. And I got that from Sean Carroll. So
I
they did not support the national park.
Thank you.
Thank you. But yes, there is, similar groups are involved with what this petition was. I mean, they even stated who the petition was from. And I think, Ross, is this a fair statement? we'll do what it takes, whatever avenue it takes to accomplish what we need to, and whatever narrative or form to ultimately do this. And so we're gonna see these things coming from different areas and different groups supporting or not supporting. It's not gonna end, and if we don't, you know,
If we don't get proactive.
We don't get
and start
proactive.
saying, look what we're doing to change.
So that is
We're
what,
already ahead of you guys. You
Yeah.
want us to do these things, we're already doing them, and we're gonna get a certification, and we're gonna get a TIF district. And I just use, I don't even know what the hell that stands for, I don't care.
yeah, taxes.
What we're gonna get,
Tax increment
we're gonna
financing.
get,
So it's
we're gonna
really
get-
can't be a TIF.
We're gonna band
district.
together locally and do what you wanna, what you're gonna come down on us, well, guess what, we're already doing it, so now what?
So it's, so that's actually
It's a
at the
solution.
Senate, or at the deal, that's what I alluded to, is that we have all these organizations that are already working very hard on this. And to say that we're not doing anything and we need this accelerated emergency is to discredit the whole SWCD, all these boards, all these water boards. We're already doing this. We don't need another person to come in and do this. Give us time, we're working on it, and we've never seen it happen as fast as what we're seeing.
Well, maybe it's an opportunity. So we are already doing it, but maybe we can access funds to do it faster and better. You know, maybe it's not a threat, it's an opportunity.
And furthermore, I have to say this, I worked in the warehouse in Fastenal, down in Winona on Thurr Boulevard, when I was in college, and that's how old I am, I'm ancient. But anyway, there was a time when that
I'm
was
not much younger than
that
you,
was
so we're
a
not ancient
swamp.
yet.
The warehouse I
Oh, I
worked in
know.
was a swamp.
It
They
Still
killed,
is.
they killed millions of amphibians and turtles, probably billions, trillions. So many, they filled it in, they filled in wetlands, they destroyed the environment in the name of economic prosperity. Winona turned a blind eye because the Bob Kierlands of the world keep donating to the city, which is wonderful, he's giving back, but he got away with destroying the environment. Probably, I don't know, 100 acres, 50 acres, it doesn't matter. He gets away with it. The city of Winona had a necessary bypass, front page Winona Daily News, I remember this 20 years ago, the day after New Year's Day, they dumped raw sewage into the Mississippi River. Raw sewage, untreated. Necessary bypass, if we dump raw manure directly into the Mississippi River, necessary bypass, we go to jail immediately. So it's a double standard. And that, it's bull crap, and the municipalities and the city of Lewiston draining their sewer ponds, and overnight, how many millions of gallons, Josh, do you know? I mean, it's several
lot.
millions of gallons of raw untreated sewage in the aquifers now. But yeah, the farmer did it. Oh, okay, give me a break.
But there's all kinds of double standards. When I drill a well, if I put any soil in a stream, then somebody calls the MPCA, and then I pay thousands of dollars in fines. But if I go to Stewartville in the spring, and there's some farmers down there that don't take very good at their land, and a heavy rain comes, their soil goes into the stream, and we all just gotta look the other way, so that's too bad. So there's all kinds of double standards, you know.
Can
That's
I
fair.
interject one thing I heard at Bond yesterday? Glenn Skuda was giving a talk about the EPA petition and the fish kill bill and whatever, and he noted, and I want to follow up and find this article. He said there was a study, you know, they've been keeping track of all the states that are contributing to the hypoxia zone. And he said there was an article that came out a couple weeks ago, he says, but it did not get the press coverage that it should have. But looking at the weighted flow means for nitrate going into the Gulf, into the hypoxia zone, accounting for the high flow years, the low flow years, and everything in between, that the US has achieved its interim goal of reducing nitrates to the hypoxia zone. He says, but it did not get the press because it was a positive story versus a negative
That's too
story.
bad.
So anyway, I thought that was interesting.
But that's defining the narrative.
Right,
They're trying to
exactly.
control the narrative, and that's what we're seeing. And it's this weaponizing people to go after agriculture, which there's no doubt agriculture has something to do with this.
Yeah.
But it's understanding the economic driver, just like the Fastenal scenario, that, hey, we produce food, hey, we do things, and yes, change needs to be made, but it'll happen. Just give it time, and it's
Right.
accelerated as fast as it's ever been accelerated in agriculture right now.
Yep, I know.
Let's go after this.
So anyway, I
Yeah.
will try and find that article, and I can bring it next time. But it was
So
just something that was talked about.
Please send it to the Winona Daily News and Rochester
Yeah, there you go.
Bulletin, and honestly.
Well,
It'll be on page 12 of the
Chris, Chris Rogers had an editorial yesterday about that, about the double standard. And he was kind of making some observations.
I don't know how we do a TIF on that, because it technically with financing, but you'd have to say, well, the financing aspect would be offsetting the cost for whatever practice.
And don't even make it related to taxes, I don't know, somehow an environmental
But there's-
event.
over the
Having an
years, there's
environmental
been a-
event locally, these people are grassroots being proactive, because they see this I don't know, but you have the power to organize
Maybe
it.
we'll take that as Semcra's budget.
Isn't that
Yeah,
accurate,
you
Josh?
could set up an EDA, an economic development agency throughout
You
the
have
whole
the power
county.
to organize it and start it.
And essentially, this activity promotes economic development because it creates a healthy environment for others.
I know the first thing would happen is it'd probably get kicked over to the SWCD and have them design something. That's what would probably happen, which is okay. But that'd probably be the process in which that would go through. Because that's the first thing they do, is say, well, we got a board to do that. And they could give a recommendation back and get presented in front of the board and then X, Y, Z. So it could happen in a couple, 2-3 years, I would imagine. So we'll bring it up. All right, agency reports.
And that was what I provided, but that was from Emily, the state response to the petition, the copy, that was.
Sounds good. Okay, any other discussion? Open discussion?
I don't know that I'm on this board next year, I can't remember, so I'm on- every year the chair changes who's on it, so I think I'm on 17 different agencies or something.
I know. I know the feeling.
Thanks, committees.
I gotta have a calendar on the calendar to
Yeah.
remind me where I gotta go.
So if you don't see me in February, it's because I'm not supposed to be here.
Thanks, Mark.
All right.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, motion adjourned.
So,
Second.
Motion by Mark, second by Ross. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
all right.
Motion is approved.